AFI's founder and Executive Director Alfred Hanning visited Uzbekistan. During his visit, our creative team interviewed him about activities of Alliance, cooperation with Uzbekistan, and asked the issues in the area of financial inclusion.
Mr. Hanning, welcome to Uzbekistan.
Thank you.
It's glad to see you in our country. Thank you for agreeing to the interview. We know that AFI is one of the leading organizations in the field of policy and the regulation for financial inclusions. This organization is well known among experts, but general public is not very aware of its activities. So before starting our conversation, could you please clarify what is AFI is and what its main goals and objectives are?
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation. Well, AFI stands for Alliance for Financial Inclusion, and as the word alliance already suggests, it's a community. It's a community of central banks and other financial regulators from 85 countries in the world who work together towards expanding financial access to people who are underserved or unserved with financial services. So our objective is actually to bring more and more people into quality access to financial services through the introduction of smart regulations and policies that can actually help to enable the market to provide these services in a safe and sound manner. And we are doing this, as I said, with 85 countries together. We are using several modalities for this. So we do a lot of knowledge exchange and peer learning among the countries, because in our experience, many of the solutions that are actually needed to improve access to financial services, many of these solutions are available in the countries where we work with. But what is missing is a mechanism to share the knowledge. So we very much believe in peer learning among countries that would enable them to drive forward these policy solutions that actually ultimately will make sure that no one is left behind. We have seen in the network quite a lot of progress over the past 15 years. We came into existence in 2009. It started as a relatively small project, which was driven by just 38 countries at the beginning, but then it grew very, very fast. And the project turned into an independent organization in January 2016, when the organization also moved its headquarters to Kuala Lumpur, invited by the Central Bank of Malaysia, where we have most of our staff now located. During this time, of course, we have also, I think, seen quite impressive impact. I think the AFI members, the regulators, the central banks, have implemented around 1,100 policy reforms or policy changes, introduced new regulatory frameworks that ultimately have contributed to the inclusion of 850 million people into the formal financial sector through AFI activities. And maybe one more thing on the principles, how we work. AFI is not so much fond of imported solutions that come more from a theoretical consideration, what should be good for a country. We very much believe in the country drive. In other words, we do believe that homegrown solutions should be supported, and everything that we suggest should be aligned to the country context. The second principle is that all our members believe in inclusivity. Inclusivity meaning that the more people we include into the economic circles and enable them to participate economically in the country, that would also lead to more stability, be it financial stability or even social stability, ultimately even political stability. So we believe that inclusivity is a precondition for stability, and that drives the organization.
How can it be contribute? I mean, maybe by making more attractive and accessible financial services available in the market?
Yeah, you see, when people are excluded, of course, they lose out of many economic opportunities. When you think about in some countries, maybe a poor household, maybe oftentimes led by a female, a woman, she would not have proper access even to a very simple financial services, let's say a transaction account. So without access to such very simple, even very simple, opportunities, she cannot participate properly in the economic life, meaning that she has more transaction costs, she might not be accepted by a bank. If she can't handle her very, very small resources properly, she might even lose all these resources. There could be cases of robbery or cases of fraud, or people could cheat her. So, when she is not in really such a very solid kind of arrangement, she would lose her economic opportunities. But once people are included into these circles, that means that their life becomes more stable. That also means that the small economy becomes more stable. And if the small economy becomes more stable, then of course also the economy as such becomes more stable. And it is also important to note that the more people are included, even the poor, the better, for example, the central bank can actually do their job. Because when more people are included, that will also help financial stability. And when financial stability is there, that is a precondition for economic growth, ultimately also for poverty alleviation.
And the other question, how the financial inclusion level can be determined and when it can be considered as this indicator in the country, like in an appropriate level?
Yeah, you see, there are of course various frameworks, that we are aware of, data sets, methodologies of data collection. This is quite complex, and it would maybe go too far here to go into the detail. I wouldn't even be able to give you all the details myself without proper preparation. But I must say that when financial inclusion started, pure access was actually in the focus. So we looked, for example, at how many bank accounts do we find per 100,000 inhabitants in a country, and that helped us to, in fact, to define the level of access. And the main objective was to drive this number up. In other words, increase the number of access. But once we saw a lot of progress globally, around access to finance, it also turned out that even if people have an account, sometimes the account is not used. The account is not used. That means maybe you have a high number of accounts and you believe that you have high financial inclusion, but on the other hand, the accounts are dormant and are not used. So usage became another very important dimension. And then of course, it was time to develop indicators to measure the usage. Now, we do see usage. What's the next step? The next step is, of course, to increase the quality of the financial service. In other words, is the service permanent? Is the service accommodating the right needs? Is the service standardized and perhaps not accommodating the needs of specific groups? We nowadays want to cater for people who are usually not included in the system. Let's say people with disabilities, the younger people. Women is a really very important objective for us to increase financial services for this group. We also have the challenge that older people might drop out of the system because they are not so familiar with technology. So in other words, the services have to be designed in a way that they can accommodate everybody. And that is our role, and we are trying to support our members in crafting regulations and other frameworks that could help that these objectives can be achieved.
We know that AFI has very many members, so what are advantages of being a member of AFI?
Right. For any central bank in the world, I think, first of all, it is very attractive to be part of this community because it doesn't exist anywhere else. We do have, as you know, among central banks, we have many existing connections, be it through, World Bank annual meetings, IMF meetings, also under the Basel-based standard-setting bodies, they come together. But there is no actually network that focuses on financial inclusion. And I think this is the main drive for our members, because they feel that financial inclusion is not just a development objective, something, let me say, nice to have. It is actually part of their core mandate, which is financial and monetary stability. And with this, of course, it makes a lot of sense to participate, because in the network they find knowledge around financial inclusion that they maybe just know theoretically, maybe from some websites or from some books. But in the network, you will become exposed to those people who are actually driving these solutions successfully. For example, when it comes to mobile or digital financial services, you can go to countries like, for example, Mexico or Kenya or the Philippines, and they have made major strides in digitization, at the very early stage. If you want to look at, for example, how to build agent networks, when even supermarkets or pharmacies or petrol stations can reach out financial services under a banking license because they work on behalf of banks, then you go to countries like Brazil or to countries like Colombia. There you can find this kind of knowledge. I could give you more examples, but it's very important that what you find in AFI are practical examples how financial regulators are driving financial inclusion in a safe and sound manner.
We know that Central Bank of Uzbekistan became a member of the AFI also in 2018. And if I'm not mistaken, it's been exactly 5 years since your last visit to Uzbekistan, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. And in 2019, during the visit of AFI delegation under your leadership, there was reached an agreement to expand the cooperation between Central Bank and the AFI. And how do you assess today its results, this cooperation?
Yeah, no, we are in fact very pleased with the developments in Uzbekistan. First of all, Uzbekistan as such, I think, is a very dynamic country. You do see a lot of economic activity, and of course you also see that technology, I think, is also moving forward in the financial sector. And whenever technology is moving forward, when technology-enabled financial services are on the move, that means that the regulator has to come in also to limit the risk of technology, but at the same time to make sure that financial inclusion can continue. So it's always about striking a balance. And I believe that Central Bank of Uzbekistan have achieved great results in this regard. I'm aware that you are now working on expanding financial services to the micro and small and medium enterprise sector. The bank is also doing a lot on gender inclusive finance. I think you're also part of broader global agreements on how to include women into formal financial services. And recently we also see a lot of activity from the Central Bank of Uzbekistan in the work streams around consumer protection and financial literacy. So there we do see the Central Bank being very active. But it's also nice to see how the Central Bank has taken leadership in the network in terms of knowledge sharing, because we can also share what kind of knowledge is available from Uzbekistan. And there we have regional initiatives with other Central Asian and Eastern European countries, where Uzbekistan is now actually chairing our regional initiative in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. We will host the regional meeting next year in Uzbekistan, when Uzbekistan will become the chair. They are now vice chair, will become chair next year. So this is very, very good. But we also see the Central Bank of Uzbekistan in some of our governance bodies. For example, the bank was a member of our Budget and Finance Committee, looking after the budget and the finances of the organization. In this regard, maybe it's also important to mention that AFI is member-owned and member-driven. So we are not owned by any international organization. We are also not a development partner. We are not a development organization. We are a member organization. That's why our member govern and own us.
How this cooperation with the central bank is progressing in general, and what plans do you plan in future?
No, for the future, of course, we have a couple of very interesting ideas in the pipeline. AFI can also, as I said earlier, can provide also small financial contributions for specific projects. So we are aware that the Central Bank is preparing a couple of requests where we could, in a very focused way, support ongoing initiatives. We are discussing on expansion of knowledge exchange around anti-fraud systems, because with the fast expansion of consumer lending, we do have the issue of frauds in the system. So the central bank is very interested in learning from other countries how actually to prevent the abuse of the poor customers to happen. Because, you know, if these frauds happen, it means sometimes that people who are already very poor can actually lose everything they have. And I think that's a very important task here as well. And then one important initiative where the bank is also very active is what we call inclusive green finance. So in other words, how can we make financial services, even for the poorer and for the low-income households, more sustainable in this sense. And here, of course, we are talking mostly about resilience of small households, but also mitigation. In other words, we want to make sure that these services are also aligned with global objectives around green finance.
What results achieved in Uzbekistan can be considered as a best practice in the field of financial inclusions?
There is, there are quite a couple to mention, but maybe I should just pick this one that we are aware of. I think the central bank has established a collateral registry, which is actually there in order to make use of movable assets, for collateral. In most cases, in the traditional banking, banks are always looking at collateral, but it must be very solid collateral, tangible collateral. But I think the central bank has gone really into new directions, using new ways to make use of these movable assets that can then also serve as collateral. And if that happens, then of course more people can get access to finance. I think this collateral registry that the central bank has supported is quite a best practice. And of course we know that other members of AFI are very interested in this experience.
And the counter question for previous question, in your opinion, what are we doing wrong in this area?
Well, I'm not in the position really, because, this is a short visit and we do not claim to know it all, and to come here and say, look, you should do this, you should do that. So that's actually not our mission. The only thing I would say, and I think this is a relevant issue in Uzbekistan as well, when you move fast with expanding, for example, consumer lending, it is also important to build the systems that help to protect the users of these services in an appropriate way. So I think the supply side, which is the expansion of the services, and the demand side, which is the protection of the customers, that has to go hand in hand. And I hear also from Central Bank of Uzbekistan that, of course, a challenge is to make sure that consumers are properly protected. So we can only encourage the bank to work on this even more and to learn from other countries who face similar challenges. In your region, Tajikistan, especially Kazakhstan, I think they're facing similar issues with a fast-growing consumer lending business, and on the other hand, we need to strengthen the customer, we need to improve on financial literacy, and of course we also need to strengthen the protection systems, for example complaint mechanisms for customers. When things go wrong, where can they go, where can they direct their questions and complaints. These are very important elements in the financial sector that I think also want to be strengthened in Uzbekistan.
Mr. Hanning,
yes.
Thank you for your time
yes.
and the interesting answers. Wish you a successful visit to Uzbekistan. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your interest. Thank you.
Thank you.